Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. Apologies for not uploading last week. I didn't do a team selection, but I did of course do a deadline stream. I got caught up on college work, I'm not going to lie. Forgive me, but not only are we back, but my rank is currently back in the top 1 mil for the first time this season. We had an absolute stormer of a week, which we will get into in a second. As usual, if you do like the video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and let's get into it. So game week 12 was very kind to me, like I said. 76 points, and I made 2 transfers this week with Gabriel and Raya coming in for Trent Alexander-Arnold and Ederson. And of course, we seen what happened in that Spurs game with Ederson, so thankfully Raya came in clutch with the 6 points. And of course, Gabriel now, who's picked up a knock, it looks like midweek. But another great transfer and 6 points up considering Trent was out. We're currently on an 8-week transfer run. That's 8 weeks in a row of 8 transfers that have all returned in the week I've brought them in, which is always a good sign. But like I say, you can only control so much, and it's like things like transfers that keep me happy, even though my rank isn't exactly where we want to be at this point in the season. When I look at the team, some of the decisions I had to make, the likes of benching Lewis for Mykolenko, of course that worked out. I had started Havertz, but thankfully he didn't come on due to Jesus playing, who played very, very well, and we'll talk about that more in the next section. But Rodgers, of course, coming in with the 2-pointer. Garnacho, who was a small bit disappointing, same with Aït-Nouri. Mo Salah, my captain, of course, coming in clutch for many managers, and a massive swing for those with Erling Haaland. To think that he hasn't returned in the amount of underlying numbers he has, very surprising. And of course, even against Spurs, he had a good few chances. So very, very unfortunate for anyone that had Haaland, and even worse if you captained him. Cole Palmer, of course, not the greatest result. Only 2 points, and he looked to play a bit deeper in this game, in game week 12. Mbeumo, of course, with the 3 points. Brentford looking a bit off the ball in comparison to what we've seen, but they have a lovely fixture against Leicester. So I'm not too concerned. Of course, Mateus Cunha absolutely stealing the show, and Dominic Solanke, who of course got an assist in the 4-0 win versus City. As a fan, I won't speak about the City game too much, and let's get straight into our team selection. So I'm not going to lie, the defence is looking a bit thin for game week 13. On goal, I've got David Raya, 3 at the back with Gabriel and Mykolenko and Aït-Nouri. This West Ham fixture is very nice for the double Arsenal boys. For anyone that joined me on my deadline stream, you'd know the thought process of me bringing in these 2 guys in game week 12. It was more so that I wanted the surety of 2 players that I know would play on a consistent basis over the busy, congested Christmas period. And for me, there's no 2 better than Gabriel and Raya, especially when you look at the clean sheet percentages and some of the fixtures coming up for Arsenal, when I had the likes of Trent, Ederson and Lewis, who are kind of, I would say, less reliable in terms of Lewis with the minutes, Trent with his injury of course, and Ederson, who I don't need to get started on. So going back to the 2 boys, I'm still fairly confident of a Gabriel start. Again, the knock midweek, he came off early, doesn't scare me too much. I think we're not going to get much with Arteta, he's very, very cryptic. But I think I will go into this game week as it stands with him starting regardless. So I'm happy with the 2 Arsenal guys. Next is Mykolenko versus United, not an ideal fixture. I do think United will definitely score in this game. I do have Rico Lewis on the bench versus Liverpool, but with the way City are going, I'm not confident of starting him. And you never know with Everton. And with the new manager, Amron, coming in for United, this could be a Sean Dyche masterclass, you never know. So I'm more than happy to start Mykolenko, I'm fairly sure, going into this game week. Of course, just to reiterate, we do have 1 free transfer and 2.6 million in the bank. One of my thoughts, which we'll get onto in the next section, which will be my transfer plans, is potentially moving on one of these defenders to someone else. So next is Aït-Nouri with Bournemouth at home. This is a tough fixture to call. I feel like both teams will score, but Renan Aït-Nouri is always going to get into those positions on the pitch, centrally and wide, and be a goal threat, to be honest. So that's the main reason for starting Aït-Nouri, regardless of how good Wolves are as a defence. But still some decent fixtures to go with Wolves, and I'm more than happy to start them. So that's the defence. Let's move on to the midfield. So taking a look at the midfield, which should be the biggest talking point of this week, with the captaincy armband being thrown around. For me, I'm just going to put it out of the way. I do think Cole Palmer is probably the best captaincy shout this week. That's not to discredit any other option this week. It's just how I'm feeling currently, and it is subject to change. Let's start with Mo Salah, who we just seen play last night versus Real Madrid. Another great performance. Of course, he missed the penalty that he won, but in general, I thought he played very, very well. A 2-0 win for Liverpool. And a very, very solid performance from Liverpool once again, no surprise. And they go into City at home, who are off the back of no win in 6. So I suppose it's easy to kind of point towards Mo Salah as the captain this week. For me, I like to take a step back, and the way I'm looking at it from my perspective is Salah's just played midweek, and again, we'll make our own narratives depend on how we see things from our own perspectives. But for me, I just think with that midweek fixture, in comparison to Cole Palmer, who has no midweek fixture, he didn't get called up for the Europa League or the Conference League squad. I just think a fully rested Palmer versus Villa at home is probably better, even though the City are in this rut. So that is the minor difference between the two for me. Again, another man I want to speak about who is not in the midfield, which we'll get onto up front. Stay tuned for that. But I do really like Villa, this Villa fixture for Palmer. And I do feel like Palmer fully rested, like I said, could do some serious damage in a game like this. And I mean, it is exciting. Villa at home, they just kept a clean sheet in the Champions League, but they are also kind of struggling. So I think that's not being spoke about quite a lot, even though Villa is still a tough game, it always will be. But I feel like the armband for me will be on Cole Palmer for now. Next is Alejandro Garnacho, which is an interesting one. He played off the left, I want to say in a left attacking mid position in this Amaron system, which I wasn't expecting, and kind of going between fullback as well. And then he switched sides onto the right and kind of done a similar position with Ahmed playing right wing back. I am hopeful of another start from Garnacho. I always thought that he is one of their best players, and I can't see any change with Amaran coming in. It's just where he's going to play, I'm unsure. I'm more than happy to start him in this game versus Everton. Like I said, I do think there will be goals in this for United. And for the time being, although he's not the best pick out of the United bunch, you'd much prefer the likes of a Bruno. But I'm more than happy for the price to go into Everton at home with Garnacho. Next is Mbeumo with Leicester at home. Quite a spicy pick for captaincy this week if anyone is looking to go there. Brentford a small bit lackluster in recent weeks, but Leicester at home with Steve Cooper gone now and Vinicius taking place. There's a lot has changed since the last time I made a video, and it is really, really interesting. I feel like Mbeumo is definitely a captaincy shout. He's definitely up there, and it is quite close this week. But for me, I feel like the calibre of player in the likes of Palmer or even Salah, who are way more reliable, they do probably favour the captaincy over the likes of Mbeumo. That's not to say he can't though. So that is the midfield. One other note is that Rodgers is on the bench versus Chelsea away. There might be an argument to start him over one of the strikers, but we'll get into that in the next section. So let's get straight into it. So up front, we've got Dominic Solanke with Fulham at home, Matheus Cunha with Bournemouth at home, and Kai Havertz with West Ham away. On paper, you would say 3 really, really good fixtures. But there is some doubts and scares for other managers, for the likes of Solanke and Havertz. Where I stand on this with my own team, for me, there's been no way I'd be selling Solanke. Now, maybe there is a small bit of bias with this. Make of that what you will, but for me, Solanke is always going to get chances in this Spurs team. Even though some mightn't kind him the most explosive asset, his biggest haul being against Ipswich. And he's only kind of, after tipping away with a few 6-pointers since. But for me, Fulham at home, and what Spurs want is consistency. And it's just the one thing we've not seen. Now, off the back of a 4-0 win versus City, you can imagine going into this Fulham at home game, they'll be more than up for it. And I feel like the feeling around the club right now is very excited. And I do think that win for Ange was a statement. So I'm quite hopeful going into this Fulham game with Solanke. Again, completely roast me in the comments if you disagree, but that's just where I stand on him. Next we'll move on to Kai Havertz. For me, Havertz, I'm in a tricky situation because he started midweek and he scored. And Jesus played very, very well in the Prem last week. So I'm unsure. For me, I feel like I should hold on to him because I can't see him staying out of the team. But yeah, he is potentially one of the moves, which we'll get onto in the next section, of getting rid of. But I think I'll be more than happy holding on to him at the same time. If he doesn't play, hopefully he doesn't get subbed on and we get the likes of Rodgers off the bench. But yeah, 8 million for a player who there is a bit of uncertainty around. Maybe he's one that should go. But let's move on to Mateus Cunha, who is definitely a buy. I don't think it's impulsive. I just think he is so much to do with Wolves when they do succeed, and he's so good for bonus points. So he's an amazing striker. I do think in general his overall play is great, and then that contributes very, very well to the bonus point system, like I said. And then overall, for the price, I think he's around 7 million now. He's a steal. So very happy with the likes of Mateus Cunha. For me, I don't think I'll be going anywhere near captaincy on him. But one player who I do think there is a shout for, and you're going to hate me for this, but it's Dominic Solanke. I won't say too much on it, other than the fact I think we'll score goals versus Fulham. And I'll leave it at that. So on the bench, of course, Rodgers, Lewis and Greaves. I don't think I'll be starting any of the three of those unless we get any news on the likes of Havertz or Gabriel somehow, which I doubt. Let's move on to the next section, which is the transfer section. So a bit of a different section this time around. In front of you, I've got my transfer page on the FPL site, and we're going to run through live maybe some of the moves I could do, maybe my thought process, to see and show you where my head is at. So like I said, my initial worry with my own team is potentially the defence. Again, I do think it is quite weak. And the first thing I look at is getting rid of Rico Lewis. So Rico Lewis, for me, don't get me wrong, I feel like when he does play, and I don't think City are as bad as we make it out to be, even with the poor results in recent time. It's for me, on a weekly basis, I don't want another headache. And going over this Christmas break, you just want more surety going into the game weeks. So for me, I actually really like a Villa defender. And for me, a good Villa defender is 4.4 Pau Torres. And he consistently gets minutes, and they have some decent fixtures coming up. So I feel like for that price, he could be very nice. And again, like I said, he's even cheaper than Lewis, so it actually gives me more money in the bank to work with. So he wouldn't be ideal for this week, of course, but we wouldn't play him, and we just play Aït-Nouri and Mykolenko. So that's one route I could take. The next one, which probably makes a bit more sense, and again, another issue that we will have in my own team is Garnacho. I think eventually down the line, unless Amaran comes out and consistently plays him, which I can't see, it's only a matter of time before he gets a bench, in my opinion. But another route that I want to talk about is getting rid of Kai Havertz. Now, this route is the most obvious one, and of course, João Pedro plays against Southampton this week, not Jackson, Pedro. And again, it's for the price. 4.9 million I have in the bank if I bring in João Pedro, and that would leave me do something spicy in the midfield, even upgrade a Garnacho, who I spoke about in later weeks. And 11.2 million, you can do quite a lot. Now, I can't get to a Saka just yet, but it would leave me go to pretty much anyone other than Saka, as I already have Salah and Palma. So to have that door open, even potentially bring in the Son, potentially, is always great. And even go up to Bruno Fernandes if I feel like I want to hold on to United asset, depending on how they do. So there are my current thoughts. As it stands, I feel like I'm more likely to hold on to Havertz and bring in a defender. Again, I could alternatively roll and just go into the game week with the team as it stands, which I'm more than happy with. Again, the armband is currently on Cole Palmer. We will be doing a deadline stream tomorrow at 6:30, as I'm fairly sure it's a Friday deadline. And of course, if you do like the video, be sure to hit that like button. It's great to be back, and I will see you in the next.